Over the last 80 years or so, Ferrari has built up a stellar reputation for producing some of the world's finest supercars and racing cars. But then, they're also pretty handy when it comes to spiders. There was the 330 GTS of the 1960s, the achingly gorgeous 250 California Spider, the bold and brilliant F50, and, moving into more modern times, the very literally named LaFerrari Aperta. This is just a mere taste of what Ferrari has brought to those that worship the sun. And now, they've built another one.
Welcome to the Ferrari 296 GTS. It's based on the 296 GTB and it costs around £280,000. That's £40,000 more than the Coupe, but for that you get a folding hardtop roof that goes up and down in just 14 seconds at speeds of up to 28 miles an hour.
It might just be a roof, but it's also a thing of cohesive beauty, each element coming together at just the right time to create a deeply satisfying work of mechanical art. However, if the 296 GTS really is to join the likes of the California and F50 on a list of Ferrari's greatest drop tops, it needs more than just a snazzy origami roof. No, a true Ferrari Spider must bring together a number of key elements to create the ultimate open-top experience with little compromise to the car's dynamics.
Now, a lot of that has to do with the stiffness and structural rigidity of a car's chassis. And traditionally, when you take the roof off, you end up with a compromised, big, floppy mess. However, in recent years, and largely thanks to the introduction of things like a carbon tub, you get coupes and spiders, or convertibles, that are as good to drive as each other.
Trouble is, unlike arch rivals McLaren, Ferrari hasn't used a super stiff carbon tub. The curb weight from GTB to GTS increases by 70 kilograms, meaning a 1,540 kilogram total. Part of that is due to the additional weight from the folding mechanism, while the rest is thanks to the reinforcement around the sills and A and B pillars. Ferrari says they could have gone down the carbon tub route, but chose not to. They argue it makes the car harder to repair and that they've honed their own production methods so finely, there's no real difference. Either way, they claim that the GTS is, in their words, more or less as stiff as the GTB, and that all they've changed is the damper calibration in order to cope with the extra 70 kilograms. Indeed, the aim with this car was to make it drive as close to the Coupe as possible. They didn't want any discernible differences.
Around the Fiorano test track, this car is 0.8 slower than the 296 GTB, so you will just about notice it on track. But here, on the road, no. I really genuinely think that this is, as near as makes no difference, just as good to drive as the Coupe, and as praise goes, that's about as good as it gets. Just like the Coupe, my favourite bit about this car is how it allows you to build up confidence in what should be a terrifying package, but somehow, it's not. Instead, you're able to trust it and enjoy it thanks to those myriad systems that keep everything in check.
For the 296, Ferrari's Dynamic Enhancer Tech 2.0 has returned, while other systems such as electronic traction control and an e-diff also feature. What's more, braking distances have been improved with ABS Evo, while the electronic side slip control now teams up with the power steering to deliver even more precise estimates of available grip that makes the car easier to push to the limit.
In race mode, which is what we're in now with the softer suspension setting for this mountain road, you're able to exploit far more of this car's potential than an everyday driver really has any right to. Just remember, this is an 800 horsepower rear-wheel drive Italian thoroughbred supercar. And even though this is the first time I've driven it, and it's very expensive, it feels about as intimidating as an Alpine A110. The damping on these cracked, broken roads is unreal with the adaptive dampers. The brake-by-wire system gives you so much feel. They've worked and honed it, and it's near perfection. And the front-end grip, it's unreal, unreal.
As recent supercars have entered stratospheric levels of power output, Ferrari's high-tech approach has come into its own. Take away the driver aids and only the most talented pilots will be able to fully harness the 296's 819 brake horsepower, let alone use it on a regular basis.
And yet, just like in the 296 GTB, this car encourages you to do just that. It's an incredible trick that, without doubt, Ferrari are the masters of.
In short, the 296 GTS passes the handling test with flying colours. But what about the sound?
I mean, surely one of the reasons you spend the extra money on a Spider Ferrari is so you can hear the engine. So it's got to be good. And when you have the roof down, there's no hiding place for the sound. All that separates you from the noise machine is just a few cubic litres of fresh air. With the Ferrari V8 now consigned to the history books, this is the first road-going, drop-top V6 turbo Ferrari, so it's got to deliver.
Naturally, the Piccolo V12, as it was named in the development phase, has had its hot tube exhaust resonator system redesigned for the GTS's cockpit to deliver the purest sound directly into the cabin.
And cleverly, they've placed the engine side of the tube prior to the gasoline particulate filter, so that means that the noise that you hear isn't muffled by any of that emissions hardware. There's no doubt in my mind that this engine does have a Ferrari identity to it. It's not a shrieking V8 or V12, but you've got that hum that builds up from really low down, and it ends up just giving you that symphony as you reach the higher revs. I mean, let's just listen to it now. Second gear. It's still there. It's a different kind of delivery to the sound. It is more turbo-led. But I actually prefer this to the V8 sound that we saw in the 488 Pista, for example, and the F8. I also, probably rather childishly, enjoy the turbo noises, especially if you short shift up the gears. It's not very traditional Ferrari, but it still sounds good. It's still fun.
So, the 296 GTS handles and sounds like a Ferrari should. Yet what does this mean for good old-fashioned excitement?
See, over the last decade or so, there's been suggestions from some quarters that Ferrari has lost the sense of fun and raw excitement in its cars because it's too busy chasing technological masterpieces that set incredible lap times and flatter the driver, but don't deliver that last element of thrill factor that some purists would expect. And considering that this has got to be one of the most high-tech Ferraris ever, if not the most high-tech, I'd say that's a bit of a worry.
To find out if the 296 GTS gets the blood pumping like a proper Ferrari should, I've enlisted videographer James to come along for a little passenger ride with me. He's quite a reserved, professional chap, so if he whoops and hollers like a teenager at a Harry Styles concert, I'll know that the GTS has done its job.
So just so you know, James, I've put the powertrain into qualifying mode because that gives you the full 819 brake horsepower at 8,000 RPM. Actually, if you have it in a lesser mode, such as performance mode, Ferrari reckons it is about 40 brake horsepower or so down. you don't get to experience the engine, and it's an unbelievable engine. Woo! I mean, listen to that. The speed of it, my God. And the brakes, these are the carbon brakes, they're standard. No fade at all. Oh, those brakes, the brakes. Oh my God. Oh. Sorry,
Jesus, mate. Give me a bit of warning.
It's just you've got that initial hit from low revs. Oh, initial hit from low revs. And then I mean, once you hit 4,500, that's when it really starts to take off. But it's almost indiscernible because you've just got so much power all over the red range. Yep. But it's usable power as well. The amount of traction that this car generates. And they've kept the nose lift in check so that when you do go for the power, it makes it adjustable. You can just trim that line. I mean, all of this is performance stuff, but the end result, for me, it's a proper experience. It really is. I mean, you take the roof off, James, and you just get 10 times the hit from the 296 GTB.
Yep.
I mean, that's an awesome car. Mm-hmm. It really is. We've spoken about how good it is, but for me, the Spider, it's just got that excitement factor.
Once James had forgiven me, we left the twisty mountain roads and headed into town to see if the 296 GTS would pass its final 2 tests. The first of which was to discover if this £250,000 plus 2-seat rocket ship could fulfill the role of a glitzy urban runabout. And if you're wondering why this sort of thing matters, then think about it like this. If you want to spot yourself a supercar, do you go onto a beautifully smooth, winding mountain road, or do you sit yourself down outside Harrods in Knightsbridge? Yeah, exactly. So, how does the 296 GTS fare as an everyday car?
Well, the good news is that around town, the 296 GTS is no harder to drive than a Nissan Leaf. All you've got to do is pop it in e-drive mode, and then you've got 15 miles of all-electric range, and you can do that up to 84 miles an hour. I mean, in the UK, the average car journey is just over 8 miles, so that means that you could do a round trip in this Ferrari without having to burn a single drop of fuel. It's also very civilized. The steering is nice and light, the visibility is good, and the ride comfort on the adaptive dampers for a supercar, well, it's excellent. I mean, yes, the roof down refinement, it could be a bit better. You do get a bit blown around by the wind at high speed, but considering what you're getting in return, for me, it's worth it. In fact, the only difficult bit about driving this car every day is when it comes to figuring out the cabin. I mean, there is a lot going on in here.
The 296 GTS's passenger compartment is quite different to the F8 Spider that came before it. Based around an entirely digital interface, the 296 borrows most of its features from the SF90. So that means a widescreen instrument cluster and haptic buttons on the steering wheel. It's far from the most user-friendly design, but then very few supercars do actually get this sort of thing right. However, while the cabin may take some getting used to, the outside of the car has to make total sense immediately. You see, a Ferrari Spider's looks must win hearts and minds at 30 paces and leave whoever is behind the wheel feeling like $1 million. For the record, I think this is one of the best looking Ferrari Spiders in years. However, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and rather than take my word for it, we've come into Maranello to find out what everyone else thinks. No joke, we didn't even have to wait 30 seconds before the 296 drew in the crowds. In a town littered with supercars, this blue Corsa Spider could have merely blended in, yet those sleek, dramatic lines and nigh-on perfect proportions did their job flawlessly. Eventually though, we fought our way back to the car and began meandering along the busy streets of Maranello in search of our hotel. As the sun set on our day spent with the 296 GTS, I kept thinking back to why we didn't give its coupe equivalent the winner's medal in our 2022 Performance Car of the Year award. It was breathtaking, of course it was, but it was also very serious. What I mentioned earlier about modern Ferraris sometimes lacking raw excitement was perhaps the case in the GTB. When asked about it, my response was never driven by emotion. I would marvel at its ability and sheer scale of engineering, yet I'd never talk about how it made me feel. In the GTS, however, it's a different story. Taking the roof off may have added weight, complication and cash, but it's also loosened the tie of Ferrari's latest masterpiece and proved that there's more to the 296 than mere numbers and acronyms. This is a car that will astonish you, make you laugh out loud and question your very understanding of physics, all in the same breath. In short, Maranello's list of legendary roadsters has just gained another entry.